art is an alternate reality.
Yeah. And to me, that's like the most important thing is like how it feels and not so much exactly what every pixel looks like. Like big themes in my work are beauty and decay, like what's the difference between patina and like worn out, beauty in the darkest moments, how can those moments be like special. My name's Theo Kingdom and I'm a designer and artist. Early on in school, I was like a bit of a troublemaker. And in Ontario, like troublemaker kids in like grade 2 and 3 that are doing like decent in school get tested for the gifted program. I didn't really want to go. I ended up going. In grade 7, I went to Upper Canada College. There I took art in my first year. I really enjoyed it, but the next year art class changed a lot. And we went back to like foundations, you know, still life shading, color wheels, things like that. I didn't really like it that much compared to, didn't feel very creative. I guess what started the digital art path was actually not digital at all. I actually lend a lot of credit to a man named Sam who recently built my parents' kitchen, and he was like a really nice guy who used to be like a music videographer. And the fact that he like left that to be a carpenter felt kind of wholesome to me, and it seemed like an honest transition that was pretty unique. And he like saw something in me, I guess, because he gave me a lot of camera equipment for free. He gave me like 9 lenses, 2 bodies, and he like was encouraging me a lot. He could have just never talked to me and it would have been totally acceptable. So that was supportive, and that really helped me feel like diving in full time in terms of learning digital art would be worth it or worthwhile. If you don't know how to do something, swallow your pride and Google it. I think that's like a really big thing actually, like just to be comfortable that you don't know something. And I think that a lot of people give up because they just get, I don't know, they just get upset when like it doesn't fall into your hands right away, I guess. Dragonflies clipping right here. Like when I was getting back into art, the first thing I started with were Polaroids. When I was drawing or painting or whatever traditional mediums, what I wanted to see on the paper or canvas or whatever, there was like a lot of limitations in terms of like technique, like knowing how to do certain things, and things that I felt were kind of like arbitrary to the more important thing for me, which was like creating like what I imagine. And like I really liked that I could plan a photo, hit one button, and then I get the result. And that kind of started the whole journey. And now when I'm working in 3D, I don't really feel like there's like roadblocks to me like expressing myself in terms of nitty-gritty technicalities that I feel like just shouldn't be in the way. I felt like there was kind of less external factors around just pure like creativity or imagination, expression. But also I just felt like there's something different about, for example, being able to create perfect realism on a painting that artistic process just doesn't inspire me as much, yeah. As much as people who are focusing on like creativity and expressing themselves over perfect execution, yeah. In 2018, I was at McGill University and I was doing more art. I started taking the Polaroids, like I said, and I was doing more and more creative things. I was doing like graffiti, and I did some of these pastel drawings. So I was doing more and more art as my mood elevated. So I had like issues with my mood before, but never an elevated mood. And people around me didn't really know what was happening, but I was doing more and more art at that time. But there came a point where I had to go to the hospital for my own safety, because my elevated mood had kind of brought me to a place where I wasn't grounded in reality. And parts of that are maybe not so disturbing, like feeling like you're on a game show when you're not. But then other parts were definitely a lot more grim, like feeling like you're in an experiment in the hospital, a Truman Show situation where everyone is placed perfectly. And, you know, darker twists and turns than that, to the point where I felt like I was legitimately in danger, and also like hoping that the danger would subside in any way possible, even if that meant that I would never leave the hospital or whatever. And then in the hospital, I started like doing more art. I felt like it was kind of all I had left to like keep me going. It was like a really defining experience for like my whole life. It definitely echoes through my art, but in just like the way that I carry myself. I actually like wasn't using a computer for about 1.5 years because I felt like that was all wrapped into it, or like I felt uncomfortable with it because it was related to how I was feeling at the hospital. So I spent a lot of time not doing any art on paper. When I came home from the hospital, I was just still feeling like horrible. Like a big part of recovery from the hospital was I wanted to like prove to myself that I could still be mentally like functional. Not everyone who goes through what I went through has a healthy brain afterwards in terms of like cognition, where they're at. So I started doing some coding. I did some creative coding for a friend, made a little loop for his song, and I started doing 3D because I wanted to up my code game, interfacing with Blender API, and I just got really carried away with it. But for example, like Bad Time is one that I made that shows a character kind of being like electrocuted and put into like a red and black cage, and then it loops through. So that is like an expression of how I felt when I went to the hospital. I was very jolly, and then I was like, oh shit, definitely in a way darker place than I thought, but also it's something that can happen again, so the cycle. Like big themes in my work are beauty and decay, like what's the difference between patina and like worn out, beauty in the darkest moments, or like how can those moments be like special. And then also like I feel like my experience with not being grounded in reality or experiencing an alternate reality, it really like threw me for a loop because it doesn't make sense. I feel like a duty to explain that and try and provide some hope for people that go through similar things, because I didn't know anyone who had ever been through that.
Your art is an alternate reality.
Yeah, I do try and like create like an environment, an atmosphere from like nothing, or like a blank canvas in the 3D program. And to me, that's like the most important thing, is like how it feels, and not so much exactly what every pixel looks like. I definitely gain like inspiration from like what's happening to me, like in my like life. I try and stay present, and like sometimes I have ideas about people, relationship situations that I'm like currently dealing with. But then again, I also like to reflect on things that were really hard for me. I'm kind of an advocate for, at a certain point, you kind of need to meet these problems head on and not create mechanisms that are soothing. And like definitely some of my pieces are like that. The sort of design that I do, it like involves darker themes. And interestingly enough, the darker ones, I usually have them planned before I open Blender. Whereas the more happy ones, I'm kind of like exploring what it could be like. The dynamic range of life is what makes things beautiful. If I made only happy things, they wouldn't seem very happy in my mind. I feel like when you mix those things together, they like can shine independently. I think that there are like some kids who have a background that I do that get told a lot, like, you better do this, you better do that. If you don't do this, you're wasting potential, you have a responsibility to do this job, this short list of jobs. So it would be cool to inspire people, not necessarily to do art, but just to like try out what they want to be at least, or be like open-minded about what they can do, especially if they're being like pigeonholed a bit because they're performing well academically. As like an artist, it's hard to do art past 30. You try and you either learn to float or you kind of have to do something else. And what keeps me going is that I feel like I'm kind of swimming in like an ocean, and if a wave is coming anywhere nearby, like I just need to be at full speed. And if this is gonna turn out, I need to be skillful at what I do, and like I want to get to a place where I have 10 years of experience as a digital artist and just make crazy shit.